Oh, yes. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. And there it is. Click of a button. We're live. Coming at you. Very exciting. Couple days before Thanksgiving. Now, you may be listening to this after Thanksgiving, but you can relive Thanksgiving by just simply listening to this episode. So happy to be here and happy to introduce to you an amazing marketer, a leader in the marketing space who's hip on Agile in the marketing world. We're going to talk a lot about that. She's in the Forbes Communications Council, but she's also got some really cool things to learn about her. You know, she's actually a Rubik's Cube solver and a spike ball champion. She's the VP of Demand Generation at CipherHealth. Alyssa Kleinman, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on the show today. I'm so excited to be here. And
yeah, I know.
Pre-Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's probably surreal to you because I know you were sharing that you were listening to several of these episodes, and now it's you.
So weird. I can just see people like me listening later. Hopefully, folks will get just a small nugget of insight similar to how much I've gotten from some of your really amazing, experts as well.
Yeah, well, big shoes to fill, but I think you're going to smash them all away. And this is our marketing leadership series. You are a leader. You have been in marketing for quite a while, and you've got some nuggets to share. And so we want to start the show off the way we do every show. I'm going to pass you this thing. It's kind of heavy, so 1 second. Okay, here it is. Thor's hammer. Go ahead. Take this.
Got it.
Go ahead. Got it? Okay, cool.
Got it.
Smash for me some kind of marketing myth or bogus strategy, misconceptions that just drive you crazy and you just want to set the record straight.
There's so many to choose from, but my favorite myth to take Thor's hammer and smash lately has been that implementing Agile is something that is really, really hard. It's actually something that with just a little bit of dedication, a little bit of practice, any marketing team can start following that process almost immediately.
Wow. Okay. Now this is exciting because we've talked to people about Agile before, but the idea of actually implementing it, getting it off the book onto paper, and this is, didn't Agile come from the realm of programmers and computer lifecycle and so I could see where a lot of marketers are like, I like tech, but not that much tech.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where at first you hear that, developers were the first ones to implement this type of process, and you think, okay, we're very different people.
Yeah.
We're behind the computer, we're in front of the computer. How do you have a process that works so well for people that work in development versus people that work in marketing? So I think that just shows how great the process is, but also surprisingly some of the similarities between where software developers might struggle and where marketers might struggle too.
Got it. So let's build a case here, because I know there's some law in your past or the thought of it. So what's the benefit before people are even like wanting to learn about implementing this into their marketing? Like, what have you gained from doing it, and why did you do it in the first place?
Yeah. So I'll back up a little bit too, just to give a brief overview for those who don't know what Agile is.
Please.
Maybe you're somewhat familiar with it, but really it's a process designed to help you and your team operate in a very flexible, fluid manner. So really looking at what are the big goals that your team has to achieve and what are the steps that you're going to take to achieve them. So sometimes those are strategic. You're trying to increase revenue, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to get tactical to do that. So an Agile process and some of the similarities that you might be finding yourself into, which is the same challenges that the software developers in the 90s found themselves in, is that if you're a marketer, you need to be able to adapt quickly. Similar to software development, you can't go off, develop something, and a year later expect the world to be the exact same.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with marketing. You can't go off, develop a really amazing campaign with multiple channels reaching a specific audience. And if you go and do that in a silo for a year and come back out, the whole world has changed. Your buyer might have changed. So that's really the benefit of Agile, is just trying to be able to be more adaptive over quarterly or even monthly or even, weekly basis.
Right.
And
So
so,
I
yeah,
like that because you're building the fluidity into the process. It's kind of funny, like process, you normally think of like firm and not changing, but you're making your whole marketing ecosystem fluid, like changeable, dynamic, keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing.
exactly. And I think if you look at it from a simplified perspective, so, had the great pleasure of working with your team a few years ago to implement Pardot.
Yeah.
And, it's a couple months long project where you're taking old assets from other systems and you're trying to create this new, better, marketing automation tool for your team that, has multiple stakeholders involved. When you look at that's, it's a large project, but in the great scheme of things, it's going to be, point in time. And you need to break that down into simple bite-sized pieces. Your team was so great in helping you lead through, here's what we're going to do in the first week and over the first month. But you have check-ins pretty regularly to see when might you need to change what you're doing. What might need to adapt. Biggest piece of advice that I really wish we had taken was building a better folder structure.
Mm,
So in hindsight, being able to go back and say, how do you take that as a small piece and be more adaptable in that moment
right.
to lead to the best result that's going to have longevity and scale. So with Agile, imagine that type of process, but doing that, across your whole team for the whole year for every project.
Wow. Whole team. That, that's cool. I love that you brought it back to the part of implementation because I think a lot of people listening have done that same have gone through that same path. And so we can all relate to that. Okay. Yeah. We had a big, like, part on implementation, but it was down to like almost like weekly sprints. Is that the word? Or weekly
Yep.
chunks where they were manageable. Okay. This week we're going to attack the tactical setup items and some of the other things and a couple learnings. And then we'll get on the call next week to adjust and recap, but then go to the next criteria. So it kind of makes it more manageable and it doesn't seem as overwhelming.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And, when those weekly check-ins, and so for my team, we work off of what we call exactly 2-week sprints. So
Ooh.
every 2 weeks, we actually have our sprint planning meeting in a couple hours where we get together and we look at what will we commit to accomplishing in the next 2 weeks. And, you have to take things into consideration. Like, how many meetings do you have coming up? Is that going to eat up most of your time? You may have a sprint where you really can't commit and shouldn't commit to accomplishing a lot of tasks because you are in meetings, you are at a conference, or you're not feeling well. You feel that cold coming on, and being able to recognize that capacity is so helpful when you're collaborating with a team. We have a very small team. So how do you make the most of everyone's time is by helping to prioritize what is the most important, not only what feels the most urgent.
Yeah.
That busy sales guy that's knocking on your door going, I really need this campaign to run immediately. And you think, okay, fire drill, let's get this done. But, you take a step back and you realize, well, maybe that wasn't the best approach because it didn't really help us achieve our goals for this half of the year or whatever it might
Right.
have been.
Right. Or I really need this collateral.
Exactly. All the time.
Please drop everything and build this one thing. And everyone
Yep.
else is like, that collateral? I don't think I would use that.
Exactly.
So you're prioritizing what's important, not what's urgent. I love that you said that because that makes sense. I think a lot of times we get into that urgency, especially if we don't have a process like Agile in place. We can just be kind of like blowing with the wind to the next high priority, email from some leader in the company or your boss. You're just constantly blowing in the wind, getting this done and then this done and this done. But then sometimes it doesn't feel like you actually get anything done because you're too busy just flying around.
Exactly. And I think what Agile, if you implement it in a methodical way,
Mm-hmm.
what you really should be doing is first you need to internalize the process with your own team because you want to get them in the habit of saying, thank you so much for that great collateral idea. I'm going to add it as a task to discuss at our next sprint planning meeting.
I like that.
So you're giving an action that you really will take. You put it in the backlog of tasks that you want to discuss. And you can follow up on it after sprint planning with a real reason or next step for what you might do. And so it takes a little bit of that, because there are certain things that will come up that are actually urgent. Maybe you won an
Yeah.
award you weren't expecting to. It's really big and you really should drop everything to come up with a press strategy to really maximize that coverage.
Yeah.
That's urgent. You should absolutely build that in. And that's what Agile allows for you to do. But at the same time, there's those things that feel urgent, that sales rep saying, I really need that one overview, that piece of collateral, that in reality, if you just take a step back and you have a better process, you can help to align more internally as to what you're doing, why you're doing it.
That's cool. What happens if you can't get it done in that sprint? Is that the right word?
Mm-hmm.
If you can't get it done in that 2-week period, is there like a backlog list you throw it onto, or?
Exactly.
Okay.
Backlog, some folks might call it icebox or something.
What do you call it?
We call it backlog.
Okay, you're the expert, so I'll just call it whatever you call it.
We use the technology, and that's the method, the terminology they use on the platform.
Oh, good. What do you use to track that?
We use the same software that our development team uses.
Really?
Yeah.
What's it called?
It's called Jira.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We've heard of Jira before. So that's cool. So using Jira for marketing, not just for the standard, because I remember doing graphic requests from our graphics team or from dev to get your web stuff built. But that's a cool idea to just put it in Jira and then kind of move things up and down the priority. That makes sense.
Exactly.
You mentioned 2 weeks. Was this suggested to you, or is 1 too short, but 4 is too long, or what's the timing look like? What makes 2 work out for you?
Yeah. So 2, I think, is standard across most Agile
Is it? Okay.
teams. It's the same thing. Again, our development team follows is 2-week sprints. I think trying to get something done in a week can be really challenging.
Yeah.
Things will pop up. It gets really hard to maintain exactly what you need to get done. So if you have 2 full weeks, it gives you a little bit more flexibility. And we actually, like I said, today is a Tuesday. And that's when we choose to do our sprint planning, because it gives you a day and a half of the first week to really get some stuff done to finish out your sprint.
Okay.
So if you end it on a Friday, that's, all well and good, but sometimes you can't get to it for whatever reason.
So you like, and it sounds like this works too. You like the idea of doing the Tuesday as the beginning of the new sprint.
Exactly.
And then that way, if you need to, you can get some stuff done the weekend or Monday morning, bright and early.
Exactly.
Close out those tasks. And is the priority then like whatever's in that sprint, like needs to get done in this next 2-week period?
So for us, we're a bit flexible. There are teams that definitely say it's either in the sprint or it's not in the sprint. And so if you have it in your sprint, that's the only stuff that you should be really focused on.
Oh.
We don't operate that way. It doesn't work so well for our team. But what we do try to encourage is if you add something into the sprint, something should be coming out. So if something really is so important to be added in, you need to pull something else out.
Because there's only so much time in the day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, as marketers, we want to be helpful. We want to, overcommit and give everyone everything they want all the time. But that's just not a sustainable model. And a lot of times you're doing things because someone asked you to, not because it's something that's really going to help you achieve your goals.
Right. And so I'm kind of learning as you're going, and this is great. So it doesn't necessarily mean it gets done in 2 weeks. It just means like that's a priority for the next 2 weeks.
Exactly. And really what it is breaking down the tasks so that it is manageable. So you may be developing a white paper. And I don't know about you, but for us, sometimes white papers they take a little bit of time. You have a lot of stakeholders to involve. You're doing research on it. And in a 2-week sprint, maybe in the previous sprint, you finished the research, but in this 2 weeks, all you have associated with that is drafting the outline.
This sounds really cool. This sounds like where did this come from? Like how did you get the notion to put this? Because it sounds like this makes marketing so much more organized.
It's a really great. I'm a huge believer in the process.
Yeah.
If you can really encourage your leadership to also buy in, you can really have a very powerful, meaningful conversation about what is marketing doing and accomplishing. And so for us, we actually were very fortunate. We've worked with an incredible consultant. His name is Mike DiPietro, and he came in and helped us implement this Agile process. What was great and where we had some advantages is that we had a process that was already being used by the development team. So the technology was already there.
Right.
And so he came in and we did really a half day on, what is Agile? How do you do it? He ran a sprint plan meeting with us. And from there, our CMO at the time was very bought in on making this work out. And she really helped champion it to the rest of the executive team. And from there, it really was just a matter of our team educating others within the company for how we were working.
Yeah. How to get the request to us and then understanding expectations of what's going to happen. Like, we're not going to ignore your request, but it has to, there's a 2-week cycle here. And unless it's like hell and brimstones, we're not going to modify our plan every time a new thing. You just throw it on the list, throw it on the list, and we'll do that sprint meeting. And I love that the CMO champion did as well. It was like, no, this is important. I'm glad she said that, because this sounds fantastic.
It's great. And, again, we're very lucky because we had so much leadership buy-in already. But we've also, we've been developing this process over last year. And of course, pausing and taking feedback from the team. Has this helped you? Do you think you're actually prioritizing your work better?
Yeah.
Do you feel less overwhelmed on a day-to-day basis? And overwhelmingly, it's been so positive for me personally, but, for my team members too, who work, very, very hard. They're not only able to continue that strong work ethic, but they're working smarter.
Right.
So all in on a day-to-day, on a week-to-week, on a quarter-to-quarter basis, we are able to be so much more productive as a team because we're aligned on what are our goals and how are we going to try to get there.
That's fantastic. As you're describing this, I'm like dying to be a fly on the wall in one of these sprint plan meetings you have.
Come join.
Can I? Yeah, I'd love
Absolutely.
to. I'll bring donuts.
There we go.
Yeah, like designer
We'll
donuts.
play spike ball after.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I need to learn spike ball. We'll get to that. Could you describe what it's like for a sprint plan meeting, and like what do people hear? What do you expect? And what kind of roles do people play in that?
Yeah. So for us, first and foremost, any sprint planning session is open. We don't necessarily advertise it, but we've had other team members that either want to see what it's like or they're just curious. And of course, it is meant to be a transparent process. So it's great to say, if you have someone who's thinking, well, what does marketing do? Well, come to Sprint Plan. You'll see exactly everything that we have.
Right.
So the way that we structure it, it used to take us a full hour and a half. So it's been a learning process. It now takes us closer to 45 minutes to really get through everything. So we'll start off by just going by team member. How have your last 2 weeks been? And really encouraging folks to share if maybe they overextended themselves or if there was a learning. So for example, if someone was attending a conference, but they didn't add that conference to their sprint, they might have said, I really put way too much on my sprint in the last 2 weeks. I should have added the conference.
Okay.
Just being able to learn from your own capacity and what's been successful.
No, that's a huge thing to be able to do that, to be able to, I mean, I guess there's humility in that, but there's also introspection, but you have to have the right team, right? Everyone has to be able to say, I learned from this, hope you can all learn from this, and not feel like they're going to get fired or something for having a learning.
Exactly. And I think, that comes to us as marketing leaders to encourage that behavior, leading by example.
So you've probably thrown some of your own learnings out there to show people, hey, it's okay.
Exactly.
I've learned too. I want to hear your learnings. Show me that you're learning. That's what I think. I mean, I'd rather hear learnings than nothing, because at least we've learned something. If you make a mistake, that's fine. Just as long as we've learned from it, then it's a positive.
Exactly. And you had someone on the show recently who said something that was that really resonated and aligns really well with what I believe is the culture of the company, not just my own management philosophy, which is if you're not failing, you're probably not experimenting enough. So you really want to encourage people to go outside of their comfort zone. And
that's a good point.
Sprint planning is a great place to do that.
Got it. So you start with learnings.
Mm-hmm. And so
does anyone never have a learning? Is it ever no, we're all good? There's always some
weeks went really as expected, and that's totally fine. It's in the beginning, everyone has a learning. As you get more used to the process and your own capacity and you're more established in your own role, it becomes more predictable on the week-to-week basis.
Right. Okay. Cool.
And I forgot to mention, so you asked about roles. When you have agile teams, you actually have someone called a scrum master.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite words. I think it's very funny.
Yeah, it's like, what
ties,
does it
ties
even
to
mean?
rugby.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
rugby, right?
mhm,
Maybe is that where it comes from?
I think so, actually.
Huh.
For those listening, please don't hold me accountable if you know that it doesn't come from that.
Or
That's
please
where
do.
my
Please
mind
let
is
us know.
going.
Yeah, let us know if you know this.
Take it with a grain of salt. But so the Scrum Master is really meant to help break down barriers. So
Okay.
they lead the processes around daily what are called stand-ups, and I'll talk about those in a bit,
Okay.
as well as the sprint planning sessions. And really, what the Scrum Master's job is, it can be someone who's the leader, but it doesn't have to be, your CMO or anyone else. It could just be someone who is really good at keeping their finger on the pulse and
Yeah.
helping others address challenges.
Okay.
So an example of Scrum Master duty might be that in sprint planning, you notice that someone has had the same task on their sprint for the last couple sprints. And you'll look and you'll say, an example might be that they are really struggling to get finalized conference attendees for an upcoming trade show. Hey, I noticed I was on your last sprint. What's going on here? Ask them to share why that's taken so long. And let's say they're really struggling to get, Sam to respond.
Mm.
It's the Scrum Master's job to go and say, hey, I got to get in touch with Sam and figure out what's going on here. So really kind of breaking down those barriers, helping
Right.
to break through the scrum.
Yeah. Okay. I like to see. This is a better way of managing too, because you could easily see how this could be. I mean, it's accountability, saying,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, you got this thing on there. It's a priority for several weeks. What's going on?" But
Exactly.
if the answer is not, "I'm being lazy," the answer is like, "Friggin' Dave won't send me the CSV file." Then the team, escalated up the chain, and we can help that person out. I like that. That's a cool way of getting stuff done.
It's great. And it really helps the team as well, because maybe the scrum master isn't the one that's going to be able to go and talk to Sam,
Right.
but they can say, oh, Mike, you sit right next to Sam. Can you maybe lean over and ask him what's going on when you see him later today? So
Yeah.
that's a way of helping the team as well.
Okay.
And so after you've kind of gone through, here's what those 2 weeks have looked like. The next piece is to look at what will the next 2 weeks look like. And so we'll look at, how much of what we said we were going to complete did we actually complete? And, if it's 100%, that's great, but that's probably means that you didn't put enough on there.
So true.
And if it's 50%, that's also not great, because it means that you put too much on there. So you really want
Right.
to find that balance. We shoot for somewhere between 75 and 85%.
Okay.
And it's also, again, it's about positive reinforcement. If you have a week where you were only at 50%, it's okay. You don't want to make anyone feel bad, but you want to understand what might be happening.
Right.
And, we've had some team members join since we started this process. And one team member was always feeling, really horrible that they weren't able to get 100% done. We took a step back and we realized, oh, we didn't share this really easy tip. You're not supposed to book up 100% of your time.
Right. You're not supposed to get to 100.
You're
Oh.
not. It's like you have at least an hour of meetings every day. That's an hour you can't commit to getting a task done, and that's
Right.
okay.
Right. Just a simple little, and they're like, oh, okay, I feel better.
It was definitely comical, but it shows you that sometimes you don't remember the learnings that you went through the first time you did something.
Right.
So you really have to try and uncover those tidbits along the way when someone else is going through that journey for the first time.
Right. Or listen to this podcast over and over and over again.
Exactly.
Totally works. So you looked at the previous weeks, the learnings from that, what you got done. Then you look at the next 2 weeks, how much is complete, how much carries over. And then you kind of figure out what the next 2 weeks is going to look like. Is that how it goes?
Absolutely. And so what we do is we ask people to come prepared with what do you believe should already be in that next couple of weeks or sprint. And we'll go through the tasks all roll into what we call an epic. So it's going to be a larger project. So for an example, one of your epics, maybe create a compelling white paper for the nursing persona. And so within that epic, you're going to have lots of tasks. Some tasks will fall into the upcoming sprint. Some may fall into a few sprints later. So you keep that backlog so you know what those tasks need to be. But you'll have gone through and we'll open up that epic and say, all right, does this look good? Is anything missing from the upcoming sprint? Everything's in there. Great. Move on to the next epic and do the same thing. And so you're looking at things from a team basis, and then you go back to an individual basis. So you go from individual previous 2 weeks, team, what are we going to do? Individual, what are you going to do?
Right.
And within the next aspect, you're looking at least the Scrum Master should be looking at, is someone biting off more than they can chew? Or does someone maybe have a little extra capacity that they should take on something new?
Got it. Epic. I even just love the word. I mean, you got Scrum Master, you got Epic. It's like we're creating a video game.
Sprints.
I
feel like an ultimate marathon runner.
Yes. Or a triathlete. Cool. Okay. Sprints. And then you mentioned, now is that all that makes up is that what makes up the planning meeting?
For the most part, yeah.
Okay. And then you mentioned the dailies.
Mm-hmm.
What are those like?
So again, it's really a matter of breaking down barriers so you can move through tasks. And so daily stand-ups, you're supposed to actually stand up so it goes quicker.
Oh, like mind blown. They call it a stand-up, and you're supposed to stand up because that way you don't go on forever.
Exactly. You want people to be just slightly uncomfortable.
That's so true. If you're standing up, you're like that much more motivated to not be standing there. It's almost awkward too. You're like, okay, we're standing.
Exactly.
let's get this thing done. Let's stop being awkward standing around each other right now. Let's go. Or like go outside in New York in the winter time. Like shivering, like, okay, guys, let's get this thing done. Let's go inside.
It's also even more awkward on video chat when you're at belly button position with the camera.
Yeah. Your belly buttons are all talking to each other.
Or you're just looking up at the chin.
Right.
You really want to get that meeting over with.
Oh man! So does everyone stand up even on webcam?
No. We had a hard time enforcing that.
Oh, okay, because I would be I would love to enforce that and just make it awkward. But you're right; it'd be kind of weird. Be like, Alyssa, please stand up. Like
if you can do it, I definitely recommend it. It didn't quite work for our team, but we're still able to keep the meeting fairly short.
Got it. Okay.
And you're supposed to talk about what have you accomplished since the last stand up. What will you accomplish to the next one? So it's much more in the weeds for your day to day. And
who joins that? Is it just the smaller teams or is it everybody?
For us, I mean, again, we have a very small marketing team. So it's really, who we're interacting with on a day-to-day basis.
And so how long does that take?
10 minutes, 15. Sometimes we'll just go off on a tangent, talk about something.
Yeah.
We booked a half hour on the calendar so that we have the flexibility of time, and who doesn't love getting 15 minutes back in their day?
Totally.
It's also a great excuse where you have 15 minutes if you wanted to talk about a report or something, or you needed an extra 5 with one team member. We have team members all over the country. So it's a great way of keeping everyone connected, at least on a daily basis.
How many people on the team?
Right now we're 4 full-time, and we have probably 4 part-time or contractors that are very involved in our day-to-day operations.
Got it. So 8+ people are joining that.
The sprint plans are usually just the full-time folks.
Okay. What about the daily?
I'm sorry, I meant the daily and the sprint plans.
Oh, okay.
And you're encouraged to talk about what that person might be doing. If you need someone's time, the person that manages the contractor's time, you can talk to and say, hey, we have a great designer that we work with, and hey, really want to talk with Kristen today. Is that okay? Great. Perfect. So you can at least align on those tasks.
That makes sense too. Cause if they're charged by the hour, it might cost a lot more to have some of the contractors joining all of these calls.
Exactly.
That makes sense. But okay. So yeah, you got 4 people, you're getting stuff done. 15 minutes. Sounds like they're prepared for that. Here's what I did. Here's what I didn't do. No drama, no like, oh, what did I do yesterday? Like you spent maybe 10 minutes prior to that, or maybe the day before, you just check stuff off so that you're ready to go when you get to that meeting.
Exactly.
I can see that making it a lot easier for you to manage as well and understand who's doing what. And, rather than doing that like sort of weekly manager meeting, you're on top of it. You know what tasks the team is doing, where they're struggling, what And so that way, when the 2 weeks comes, you're not like surprised.
You're totally hitting the nail on the head.
That's
And
awesome. No, I'm like
it's
buying
great.
this thing. I love it. It's fantastic. You mentioned earlier that, the word alignment, and it got me wondering, have you seen any of this helping with your alignment to sales? You mentioned the open meeting on the planning side. Is sales kind of like clued in a little bit better into what you're doing, or has this helped in any way?
Well, I'll take that hammer back if you still have it.
Yep, here it is.
And
All
just we'll
yours.
keep smashing some myths.
Smash.
Uh, you know, I really don't believe that there has to be a war between marketing and sales. And, you always talk about marketing and sales alignment, and pretty much any marketing conference you go to that's B2B will have multiple sessions on creating alignment with sales. And a lot of times I find them to be overly complex.
Sure.
And really, I think it boils down to, first and foremost, your leadership. Are they aligned around your key goals? And do you have shared goals? And if you have those pieces, which I know is not always the easiest to get to, but if sales goals are revenue, well, then how much is marketing helping attribute to or contribute to that revenue? If sales goals are, around volume of calls or emails, well, how is marketing supporting that volume of calls and emails?
Right.
And if your marketing team that is only ever focused on branding, but your sales team is focused on revenue, of course, there's going to be friction there. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
alignment should come from sharing those goals and how are you helping to achieve them.
Share the
And,
goals, help to achieve them. I love that.
maybe I'm a bit naive just because, we do have a really great sales organization and sales leadership that they're very eager to work with you. And so what the Agile process helps do is create that transparency in, well, what is marketing doing and how are they trying to help us achieve our goals? So every quarter we have what we call our epic planning meeting. And this has become one of my favorite meetings because we're bringing together pretty much the entire management and senior leadership of the company together.
Wow.
It's scary.
Yeah.
You're really laying yourself out there going, well, here's what we're going to be doing. And of course, what the epics that we're working on are going to be informed by meetings that we might have with different function leads, or what we're getting from the C-suite in terms of priorities.
Right.
And so we'll break it down to, all right, we know that the company's strategic priority is X. Then we have our own priority that ties to that strategic priority, which will be Y. So you already have two columns of basically goals that creates a funnel. And then the next column is, so what's the big program? What's the big epic you're doing to reach that goal? So if your company's strategic priority is hit X revenue number, then your marketing priority might be, we need to increase conversions at the bottom of the funnel.
Right.
Great. Then the epic might be, we're going to launch an account-based campaign for high level deals. And then you might have some examples of the tasks for what those would be. So you need to develop the creative, chalk with the sales team. And then what we do is we have the whole marketing team present the different epics and talk about them. And they are very open to feedback, whether it's in that meeting or someone wants to set time up later. This way, there's that level of transparency for what is marketing doing and why are we doing it? And what do we hope to achieve by doing those things?
Right. I love that you're tying into the company's priorities, which is likely tied into sales priorities. And then you're like, okay, that's X and here's why. Here's our piece of the pie here that we can contribute to this whole mix. And then from there, epics come from your priorities and then the tasks as well. That's really cool. Yeah, is the company communicating their priority to you in marketing ahead of time? Like, do you have, they just tell you like what the year looks like so that you know how to plan that quarter, or how does that all work?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of, and again, this comes to leadership alignment.
Yeah.
Does our CMO have a tie to what's going on in the C-suite? And, it's his or her job to be able to say, here's what's changed, or here's what's remained the same and why.
Right.
Of course, the beginning of the year, you're going to have strategic priorities, but by the middle of the year, the world might have changed. So you go back and you say, well, has the world changed? And be able to tie pieces back to that. And sometimes you might have the same priorities, but where they rank might change. So then we need to also adjust.
Yeah. Yeah. Where does MQLs fit into all this? We were
Oh,
chatting earlier
the
about
MQL.
MQLs and that kind of stuff. Do you
So
use them in your company, and what does
we
sales
do.
think and all that?
So for us, I don't believe the MQL is dead,
Okay.
but I do believe that the MQL should not be your biggest target. Your volume of MQLs is an indicator, but it really, if you only ever look at that number, you're not incentivizing necessarily the right activities.
Totally agree. I love that. Yeah.
It's been great to hear from other marketing teams for how they approach their goals and what's been successful for them, because in full transparency, most of our year we spent focused on the number of MQLs, which is why I now believe that is not the right goal.
Right. What happens when you do that?
You make the sales lives, I think, just a little bit harder, because you might be passing folks that really aren't quite the right target. They're not quite the right level of engaged. They don't have all of the information that's necessary. So it's a learning process. And I think if you're going to be using MQLs as a metric, you really need a shared definition for what is a marketing qualified lead.
Right.
Um, and if you're going to be measured upon that, having that shared definition is so critical,
Right.
because that way you need to go back and analyze, well, are the MQLs that we are quote unquote passing over the fence, do they align with that definition? And if not, how are we adjusting maybe our automation rules or our assignment rules to better meet that definition?
Right. And so by their very nature, I mean, you don't have much time to be able to fully qualify them. It's like, it's sort of like we took a peek, and all things indicate they might be a better fit than other ones. And that's why we're sending them over, hopefully. So what kind of definition do you settle on? What definition is sales cool with it?
So what
If
they're cool
ever.
with and what they'd really love are different.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
that's okay. And, for us, we're just always looking back at the data for, well, what's actually driving success and what's maybe not.
Right.
But for us, the definition comes to, does the lead meet our ideal customer profile? So are they a part of an organization that we believe has a propensity to buy? Have they engaged at a certain threshold? So, maybe that's a form fill, maybe that's visiting us at a conference, but we, have at the very least what that score threshold is.
Yep.
And then they need to be at a certain title level or above. And where for us it can get a little dicey is if we titles can get really weird. Do we actually know where they sit within the organization? So that's for us a struggle we have right now, is defining, well, with a specific title, how do we, with our best guess, decide whether or not they're ready to be pushed over, thrown over the fence.
Right. Thrown over the fence. I could see that being that's a solid thing to pass over. Hey, here are the things we know. We know they fit our ideal customer profile. What if you don't have enough data for that? Or how do you get that remaining data? Do you ask it all in a form? Do you use like a data app, or how do you get all those other pieces to that puzzle?
Yeah, it's we're in the process of implementing a data enrichment vendor.
Okay.
So that's one piece of the pie where
How's it going? Is it going well?
we
Still in
actually,
the middle?
I have to say, my counterpart in marketing ops is so talented, and just really does a great job of helping to keep these things moving. And his counterpart on sales ops is also someone who is so smart, so talented.
What are their
Um,
names? Give them a shout out.
yeah, Jason Yuhas. Thank you. Don't say I didn't do anything. He's our leader in sales ops, and Eric Kunz is my counterpart on marketing operations. And the two of
Awesome.
them
Rock
joined
stars, both of these guys.
such rock stars. If you are listening and you don't have great sales ops or great marketing ops, go out and find them, because they can really make your life so much easier and better.
Don't take those guys,
Yeah,
but
don't take
look at
those
them, their example. Yeah.
guys. They're great. I'm sure they would be happy to share some of their learnings as well if you reached out.
That's awesome.
And So for them, they both come on board fairly recently and have really done a great job of revolutionizing what we're able to do within Salesforce and within Pardot. And I think there's still a lot that we can do and improve upon, but having that foundation is really critical, because even with a shared definition, if you don't have a way of measuring it and being analytical about it, it's not really going to be very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. All the bad things come from not aligning on that simple metric. That's fantastic. This is amazing. I've learned so much this morning. My next question really is like, who are you? How did you become the wizardress of Agile and in the all-knowing, all-seeing marketing ops and amazing demand generation VP? Like, where did you come from? Take us way back, like little Alyssa days.
Little Alyssa. First of all, little Alyssa had no idea what demand generation was. That's for sure. I originally wanted to be a lawyer, or something in foreign policy was really where I was headed. Yeah. And in thinking back, it's a little bit funny because I've always been interested in marketing without really knowing it. As a little kid, I remember watching a diaper commercial and thinking, "Oh, this commercial is so bad." I'm 8 or 9. I don't know why I was thinking about a diaper commercial, but I just remember then pitching to my grandma a better diaper commercial.
Hey.
And
do you remember any of the specifics, or just like it was bad and you're like, no, this will be way better?
Yeah, I just remember thinking I was really funny with some diaper commercial about, maybe it was that it was just still doing the comparison between Huggies and Loves, and it's the same thing of like Bounty versus Sparkle. It's not really telling you anything,
right?
And so that's, by the time I got to school, I found myself very attracted to marketing opportunities. Not even the classes, but just things like being a campus rep for something, or what I then learned was guerrilla marketing, which I think is a very funny term. So found myself very attracted to that, and eventually realized that not only did I not want to go to law school, but and suffer through even more homework and tests and finals.
Ick.
I thought, well, business, that seems reasonable, and marketing was really where my heart came to find itself.
That was before school happened?
So no, that was during.
Oh, during. So you were kind of doing some core classes freshman year, and you're like, you were attracted to all the. Did you declare for like law or anything, or?
For political science, yeah.
Oh, you did. So you're like, this is me, and then you're like, actually,
this is not me.
Yeah.
And pivot, but I think that's how most people find themselves. If you, if you say a plan out loud, it's a good way of making God laugh. Is quote recently that I heard that I really liked, and it's really true. If you think you're going to go into something, just let life happen, and you'll be very surprised where it takes you.
Yeah, for sure. That kind of reminds me of, I was reading this book, Atomic Habits, and it says like the goal is cool, like state it, but then really it's the systems that are in place that will get you there. And I think back to you and Agile and all these things, and I'm like, like set some goals, but more importantly, have the systems in place to be able to execute, and then you can probably surpass the goals because you've built that system around you. So that's really cool.
And for you, did you ever think that you were going to be starting your own podcast and leading your own company and doing all the incredible things you're doing in marketing today?
Yeah, you're right. They're kind of like little tests, right? Like the podcast, I remember it was 2 years ago, and I was like, man, I really need to do thought leadership and content for the company. Like, it needs content. And I thought, I'm really good at writing, but I'm the kind of writer where if it's not perfect, then it's just like, like take the time to craft it. But then if you don't get it right, you put it away and you maybe don't come back to it. So I was like, I'm really having a challenge creating content. So that's why I was like, but I can talk and I can interview people that are smarter than I am. And so that the podcast was just a test. And I didn't realize that like 2 years later, I'm like, love it, all in. It's kind of my jam.
And still doing it really well, and
still doing it. Yeah.
Attracting really great folks to listen. And, for me, it's so educational too, just getting value from hearing from others. I think learning from others' experiences as a marketer, being open to that can really lead you down a really productive path. if you just let it.
Yeah, you just kind of be open to it, to your point. Just see what happens, try it out, test. I mean, that's what marketing is though, right? It's just we're testing different things. And the faster you can test the newer things, the more you can stay on top of it.
Yeah. I think back and, before joining CipherHealth, I wanted to do business to consumer.
Okay.
I wanted to work at an advertising agency, and I definitely didn't want to do anything in healthcare. I grew up around healthcare and I was like, this is just a mess.
Right.
And so lo and behold,
Did you do any B2C?
I had a really amazing internship opportunity of all things at Ogilvy and Mather.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was an unbelievable experience. And I really lucked out because, you get randomly assigned as an intern to different teams.
Yep.
Some folks were really lucky. They did account management for NASCAR, and others maybe less lucky. And for me, I think I was the luckiest of all because I got placed in what was at that point a 2-person team focused only on mobile.
Oh, wow.
And that since then, I believe that team has been kind of integrated more into the overarching digital team there. But I just learned so much about, what it means to create a mobile first strategy, and was able to interact with so many different brands. It wasn't just one project. It was part consulting, part project. And it was, being on such a small team, it meant I had the opportunity to really get my hands dirty, so to speak.
Right. And no doubt you got exposed to all these different test results. You were able to see one strategy, how that worked with one brand versus another. And I always like that internal agency or that agency kind of experience because it has its drawbacks, but you get exposed to all sorts of data points and all sorts of budgets that maybe you wouldn't have available as just a single organization.
Yeah. And, this was really a long time ago. And it's really fascinating to go back and think about those experiences and what at that point was forward thinking and innovative.
Yeah.
And what would still be considered innovative and forward thinking today versus what might be something that I wouldn't recommend as a strategy. Just knowing what I know about consumers and, everyone's always about building an app, for example. And that really isn't always the best method of being in touch with your audience.
So true.
No one wants to go and download something from the App Store unless there's real value in keeping that on their device.
So back then, almost 5 years ago at that point, everyone was like, oh, build an app. You sign up with an agency's like, we're going to build you an app.
Right. This was, actually probably closer to 2010, 2011. Apps were very, people were all starting to be on the smartphones, on their iOS devices. I think, Androids were starting to rise in popularity as well. So more and more people are having access to applications. And I think that's even still true today, where people assume that an application is the best way forward, especially in healthcare too. Everyone is always talking about the new health app or something like that. And if you're really trying to reach consumers, an app may not be the best method for that.
What do you think it is now?
I think you really need multiple channels. You can't rely on one method. I think, your team really supports that idea too of you need that push and pull, that inbound and outbound. If what you can accomplish can happen, via text message or via your website, that might be a better option than asking someone to download an application, create a profile, and, do X, Y, or Z. Is the benefit that they're realizing something that they will truly realize? Right. There might be a benefit that if they use it, their, healthcare providers get more data, but if they can't see that and they don't feel that, they're not going to enter their information frequently enough to actually get that value.
Yeah. And there's so many apps on my phone that I don't even use. I might have downloaded it. So you got me to download it, but I may insta delete it or just let it linger and die on my phone.
And that unused folder that eventually you go through and you go, oh, right, that app. Bye.
Or you get a new phone and you don't bring it over. And I could see a lot of companies putting a lot of money into that when it's like, maybe there's another place to go with that.
Right.
Another channel. If you were to think back across your all these different experiences in marketing, if you were to go in a time machine and you were to go back to the beginning of your marketing career, maybe you just got out of school, whatnot, what would you tell yourself? What would you advise yourself?
I think I'd go back and I would just say, stay open to opportunities. The opportunity is more than the name you're associating yourself with. That's great, but is that really going to offer you the right path to getting as much of a diverse experience as you can? I think a lot of times, especially as you're just about to graduate school, you really want almost any job that someone will give you.
Right.
But really ask yourself, is this job putting me in a silo? If you're really interested in marketing, and you should really try to get as many types of marketing experiences as you can. Don't just get siloed into just social and writing tweets all day.
Right. It's a really good point. There's different kinds of marketing, and the kind you love is out there waiting for you, but you got to try them all out and experience. Maybe you're an AdWords genius. You don't even know it yet. And you've been just
Exactly.
stuck in social land, and maybe it bothers you. And if it bothers you, it's probably not the right place for you to be in.
Exactly. And there's some really amazing marketing programs. I think Procter and Gamble has an amazing training program as you go in. And if you're fortunate to get that, that's fantastic because it gives you so much exposure
That's
to
cool.
different areas of marketing, and allows you to just see what do you enjoy and then what are you good at. And maybe if you're really, really lucky, you'll find that, piece of the Venn diagram where both of those things overlap.
Yeah, that's the magic spot, right? Something you're passionate about and you're pretty darn good at. It just kind of comes to you naturally. I've heard it called the unique ability. Like that's where you need to spend most of your time.
I like the unique ability.
Yeah, I can't take credit for that. It's Dan Sullivan. He's a smart guy up in Toronto. But yeah, it's your unique ability. One of the things they had us do this program called Strategic Coach. There's like a 4 squares, and on the bottom row is things that you hate and that you're bad at. You write that you have to do in your job. You write those things. Hopefully, that's not too many things. And then another side is things that um, you don't hate. They're like okay to you, and you're pretty good at them. And so that's the row you don't really want to hang out in. And in the top row, there's a square that things that you're really good at and you enjoy doing. Those are like, yay, fun. But then the final square is unique ability. That's things you absolutely love doing. You would do for free if you could. And you're actually much better than a lot of people at. And that's unique ability. And the whole goal of the exercise of doing that is to figure out, first of all, what's in there. And sometimes
Right.
it's hard to figure out because you take it for granted. Like things that you're really good at, you take for granted. Like, oh, you're really good at, well, no, yeah, I just do that. No, you're really good at that. Like that. And usually it's other people see that and they go, oh yeah, you're way better at that than all of us here. But then that's the place to hang out and spend most of your day. And ideally, if you can get your job to be focused in that area, it's fantastic. Job, career, company, whatever it is.
You're happy, you're more productive, you're helping others be more
Yeah.
productive. Well, so you're begging me to ask you basically, what was in the
Uh-oh.
bucket that you absolutely hate, and then what's in your unique ability bucket?
Yeah. So the bucket that I hate, some things I was thinking about in there, um, yeah, going through email, like I like conversations. I like when I get the good emails, but just sort of sorting through all the junk and to-dos and the tactical lists and the calendar stuff. What else is in there? Oh, money, like numbers, budgeting, finance. You take a step, planning finance was in there. I'm just like,
Just
oh,
hate those things.
yeah. And then in the top square is really around like learning and performing. So like learning and teaching was really what was in that one for me. Love learning, deep diving into this conversation. I mean, I had heard about Agile, but somehow this conversation made it real for me. I don't know if you could tell, like my question is very practical. Like I'm literally trying to like, we should do this here.
It's great.
And
Would
and then
recommend more.
also, yeah, and then also like just teaching, whether it's a podcast or speaking at Dreamforce or just one-on-one, that type of thing. I love learning things and then giving it back and presenting to people and then kind of infusing it with some energy and just bam, it's energy and kind of focusing it out there. So yeah, it took a lot of time. And one of the things they even recommend at that strategic coach class is you have this little like letter you actually send people, or email. nowadays, but you send people an email saying like, hey, I'm doing this thing, strategic coach, or I heard it on a podcast. And what would you say is my unique ability? Unique ability is something I'm better than anyone else at. And I'm sending this to you because I think you know me better than a lot of other people. You got to send that to like a bunch of people you know and trust. And you start getting a lot of letters back that start indicating and pointing at that same type of square.
That's really, really cool. That must be
Yeah.
hard too, to open yourself up to that. I can imagine that you're almost nervous for what you might get back because you just don't even know what others might be perceiving you.
Sure. Well, the good news is you can choose who you send it to.
It's true
Um,
too.
and so you don't send it to the jerks. But also what ends up happening is some people take the time to write a lot and some people like write a sentence, and so either way, a lot of them all are indicating the same direction, but you really start to appreciate the people who like took the time and they wrote out a bunch of stuff and they said, hey, here's what I'm thinking. And you're like, wow, that person really cares. I didn't even realize that.
Right.
And it's kind of eye-opening to have a bunch of people tell you that thing you took for granted completely is actually your unique ability. What any ideas what might be in yours, or is this like the start of another epic for you?
It's definitely going to have to be the start of another epic. I think if I was going to have to put something on the spot on a piece of paper right now, it'd be something around, strategic planning and figuring out, you briefly brought up my Rubik's Cube solving ability, but
Yeah.
I really love solving the puzzle.
Oh, interesting.
How can you figure out if you make one move or you put one puzzle piece in one area, how are you going to find the next one?
Yeah.
And then at the end, what's your puzzle going to look like? Is it going to come together? Are you going to be missing pieces? I also do really bad metaphors, as you can see.
I love the metaphors. They're good.
So that I think I really love uncovering, well, who are the strategic players that need to be involved and how do I get them as excited about something as I am? And I think that also boils down into what I love about marketing, which is, how is what my team, what we're doing today impacting what might happen in the future? And I'm really lucky to work at CipherHealth, where ideally that future means that a patient's getting better care, better help, having
That's
a better
awesome.
experience. So it's really nice to find the things that you're good at, the things that you enjoy doing, and then the things that actually fall into that ideally are putting more good into the world than anything else.
Yeah, it's great when that column can really help people. And I think you brought up a good point that reminds me, part of this exercise is then finding people, because what you realize is there's actually people that square that has things that you hate. There are people that love that.
Right.
And so the idea is let them be in their ideal zone, and then they enable you to be in your unique ability, and everyone's in their unique ability, and you're all having a great time because no one's like, oh, doing the thing I hate doing. I don't want to go to work. Work sucks.
Right.
No, you're like, oh, I get to do just what I like doing. And if someone's like, oh, I don't want to present that. I have to talk to people. No. Casey will do that.
Let me do that for you.
Yeah, I'll do that. You just do your thing. And then that way everyone kind of is at their best. And it's not even work. Everyone's just going into school or work just to have fun.
Right. Exactly. I think if you can hit that, that's just, it makes going to work enjoyable. And you spend more time with the people you work with, probably more often than people that you're friends with or, you're related to. So if you can make that as enjoyable as possible, that just makes everything in your life so much better.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that's the goal. And then everyone around you loves it too. And then you're helping enable them. And it's like, to your point, it has to start at the top, just like with Agile. Like the people at the top need to be in their unique ability. But then once they are, they can start telling people on their team what that's like, and then helping them figure out where their unique ability is and kind of encourage them to do that.
Absolutely.
So, you mentioned the Rubik's Cube. What's the story behind that? You learned how to do that. And I've seen it. I've tried, other than taking the stickers off, which is like heresy, as a kid. Why did you learn that? Where? How?
Yeah. And, I have to caveat by saying I just know the steps to solve the Rubik's Cube, and I can do those very fast, but wow. I'm by no means someone that would ever be in a Rubik's Cube completion competition. Those people, they just get it at a different level.
How fast can you do it?
Under 2 minutes, which I really appreciate.
Do you have one on your desk, right? Like
I don't have one on me right now, but I have like 2 in my desk at work.
Of course you do.
And
that's awesome.
It's funny you bring up the work with Rubik's Cube. So, I went to high school here in Houston, Texas, and we used to do these programs where after winter break, you'd have 2 weeks of learning, experiential learning. Sometimes especially as a kid, you're like, well, this is great. And as an adult, you really go back and appreciate those more than anything else. And, 1 week was doing things outdoors and camping and hiking and putting just yourself a little outside your comfort zone. And the second week would be in the morning. You would be able to choose what classes you did. And in the afternoon, it would be community service. So really cool. Nice, well-rounded couple weeks. If you're anyone connected to a high school, I couldn't encourage this activity more. Kids will love it.
What was it called? Do you remember?
We called it Winterum. So it's like interim courses. So Winterum,
wow.
Winter, clever.
Marketing.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the Emory Weiner School in Houston, Texas. And okay. I don't know if they do it anymore, actually, but I hope they do. And so one of the classes was how to solve a Rubik's Cube. And I remember just thinking, who is not taking this class? Because this is a life skill right here.
You could somewhere in the other part of the world, someone's going, who would take that class? And you're like, who wouldn't take this class?
And you know what? More people fell into the class of who would take this class.
Yeah.
It was, me and 4 other students. And throughout the course of the week, we learned how to solve a Rubik's Cube. And I'll tell you, for the rest of high school, my classmates were jealous, for sure.
Hell yeah, they were.
I'm bored in class, but I'm at least solving a puzzle every day. But it really,
it's more than the rest of them can say.
Exactly. It really came full circle because my first day at CipherHealth, I walked in and there were Rubik's Cubes everywhere. It had been their conference swag. And I thought, oh man, this is the company for me.
Everywhere, and like hundreds of them, it was the swag.
All over the desks and everything. And we'd take them to conferences. And, back in the day, we're really bootstrapping it. And TSA would look at everyone's bags, very confused and say, what's in there? No, it's Rubik's Cubes. You can look at them. You can play with them.
Jeez, that's awesome. Yeah, I think I shared earlier with you that TSA looks at, I've been learning to juggle, and they look at these like beanbag juggling balls, and they're like, what are those? I've definitely had them pull me aside and search them. I'm like, yeah, I'm learning to juggle. And they're like, okay, weirdo, keep going.
Do you actually try to do it for them while you're there?
Well, I can only do 2 right now, so
it's less impressive.
Yeah, they're like, oh, they would definitely send me to secondary if I tried to juggle, I think. They're like, oh, this sounds like a cover story. Let's inspect these further. That's crazy. But, wow, meant to be though, huh? Rubik's Cubes. And you mentioned this earlier. What is it about it? You're solving a puzzle. It's kind of analytical at the same time it's creative. And how do you solve that? Is it like, how long did it take you to learn?
I actually taught our chief nursing officer, I taught her at a conference once how to do it. And she learned in like 2 days. For me, it took, the full 5, but, it's muscle memory more than anything. So for folks like me who solve it based off of just knowing the patterns, the biggest key to know about a Rubik's Cube is that the middle piece on every cube, those are the things that never move. So you're always going to have white opposite of yellow and, red opposite of orange and blue opposite of green, whatever the colors of Rubik's Cubes are.
Right.
Those center pieces never move.
Right.
And I know this is going to sound so weird, but the other big piece is that you have the center pieces, they don't move. You have the middle pieces. So you always know that if it's, let's say, a white next to a red, that white and red middle piece always has to go right where that piece is.
Got it. Like you need to always get the middle figured out.
Exactly. Or you know the middle, so then you can figure out where each of those pieces go next.
Oh, right.
The colors don't change. So It seems when you're looking at a Rubik's Cube and you don't know what you're looking at, it's a big giant jumble, and you almost think that any piece could go anywhere.
Right. Like what color do I want to put on this one? I don't even know.
Exactly.
But you're saying, look at the middle. That's the color that's going to be on that side.
Exactly. And, for example, you'll never be able to have, if you have white opposite of yellow on the Rubik's Cube, there's never going to be a white yellow piece somewhere because they don't touch each other.
Right. It almost seems like delayed gratification too, though, because I know you got to do some moves that makes it kind of more messed up than it is, but then it somehow works out in the end.
It's, every Rubik's Cube I think can be solved in 19 moves. I cannot solve a Rubik's Cube in 19 moves, but there are people out there that can do that so quickly because they see exactly how the puzzle looks
Right.
and how to, how to get it to be perfect again.
I've seen that in YouTube, and someone said like 4 seconds, and I was like, you're full of like baloney. But then the kid like looked at each side, knew where every color
Exactly
was,
how it
and then
was.
did the 19 or whatever.
Just
Wow.
nuts.
I was at a
It's
Salesforce
very
World
impressive.
Tour, and the guy at Coat Check did it, and just blown away. Like it was amazing. So
It's
yeah,
one of the best things I can do when I'm behind the trade show booth is just sit there solving the Rubik's Cube.
I'll take that over a fidget spinner any day. Like get
Oh,
something done, you know?
absolutely.
Does it feel weird to mess it up after you've made it nice and
Other people feel weird about it. I'm like, great, time to do the puzzle again.
time to the puzzle again? Wow. 2-day on-site though to get that up to speed. That sounds like a lot of work, but might be easier than juggling. Let me tell you.
I think with juggling, it's legitimately something in your brain changes to be able to move all the pieces at different times.
Wow, mind blown.
You're literally blowing your own mind while you're trying to learn how to juggle.
Seriously, I'm like connecting synapses that weren't connected before.
Exactly.
I should as soon as we're done here, I'm gonna have to get back to the juggling. Just get going.
You should go get a brain scan now and then really get back into
You're full
it.
of good
Learn it.
ideas. That's
Do it again.
it's too late for me though. I'm midway through.
Oh, fair.
Yeah, but yeah, that would be very interesting. You see, it's good. It's good that we're not in psych. Researchers at an institution. We'd be doing juggling grants,
That sounds great.
doesn't it?
That feels like maybe my unique ability somewhere in there.
Yeah, and then somehow tying it back into marketing at some point to justify,
Mm-hmm.
the expense to the company.
Just a quick PhD in psychology sounds great.
Yeah, just a little afternoon course, little Phoenix Online, UNH. It's all good. This is fantastic. Where can people connect with you if they're like, I need more of this?
Yeah, absolutely.
LinkedIn, Twitter. What are the good ways that people reach out?
LinkedIn's probably the best way to get in touch with me.
Okay.
Alyssa Kleinman, working at CipherHealth, and always happy to share any learnings from Agile or Rubik's Cube solving. Whatever tickles your fancy.
Yeah, you need to start like a YouTube channel for those videos. Rubik's for marketers.
Rubik's for marketers. Solving the puzzle of marketing.
You just named the podcast just now. You just totally just named it. That's fantastic. I love when that all kind of falls into place. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on here.
Thank you so much for having me, and hope you have a fabulous Thanksgiving full of a mountain of sides and turkey and all of the fix-ins that you can imagine.
That's it. And for everyone out there listening, if you learned something, and I know you did, why? Because I literally have 2 pages of notes over here with like no room to spare. If you learned something, then share this episode with someone else. Be a thought leader to at least one other person and make their day and help their career shoot into the stratosphere. And check out Agile and see how you can get that involved in your marketing. And Alyssa, thank you again so much for being on here.
Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Have fun out there eating that turkey. This has been the Hardcore Marketing Show. We'll catch you all next time.